She handed a steaming mug to the man with the dog, right under the inspector's nose. Her boss didn't shout, didn't scowl, just delivered a cold, final blow. "You're done, Amara." 8 years of devotion, erased in seconds. She didn't beg, just untied her apron, hands trembling, and walked out. Not for breaking rules, but for defending a black veteran and his service dog. What Amara didn't know, someone recorded it all. Before the cafe's morning rush faded, 3 Humvees roared in, led by a colonel who owed his life to men like the one she protected. Then came the inspector's father, a man with a debt from decades past, ready to teach a lesson that would echo far beyond that small Virginia town. What would you do for someone who served? Can kindness outlast prejudice? Share your thoughts below. And if this story moves you, like, share, and subscribe to Black Echoes for more tales of quiet courage. Amara Evans wasn't the kind you noticed first, but she lingered in your memory. At 38, she ran Soul Haven Cafe, tucked on the edge of Oakley, Virginia, a short drive from Fort Caldwell, one of the largest Army bases in the Southeast. The town felt like a postcard, maple-lined streets, flags on porches, a diner unchanged since the 80s. But inside Soul Haven it was different, warmer, more human. Amara made it so. She didn't just serve coffee. She built a sanctuary. No fancy lattes, just strong brews, free refills, and a bulletin board covered in handwritten notes. She knew names, birthdays, deployment anniversaries. She remembered who took their eggs sunny side up, who hadn't touched coffee since Kandahar. Every Wednesday at 9, she hosted Heroes Hour, a quiet tradition that started with 3 veterans. Her father-in-law, a retired sergeant, Clara, a Gulf War medic with a booming laugh, and Jerome, a Vietnam vet who spoke little but never missed a week. Over time, more came. Black, white, Latino, from every war, drawn not by the menu, but by Amara. She'd say, "This is a place to be seen, not fixed," and they'd nod, shoulders easing as they shared stories, some light, some heavy, some too raw for words. Her husband, David Evans, died in Syria 7 years ago. His photo hung above the register, not in uniform, but in jeans, grinning with a mug outside the cafe, taken weeks before his final tour. Amara never remarried. She poured her grief into Soul Haven, not to forget, but to build something that mattered. Veterans called her ma'am with respect. Kids held doors for her. Even the mayor stopped by to thank her for stitching Oakley together better than any town hall. For Amara, it wasn't about glory. It was about the quiet mission. Every cup poured for a trembling vet. Every moment she stepped from behind the counter to check on someone staring too long out the window. Every time she let a service dog curl up under a table. That Wednesday morning, as the bell jingled and the regulars filed in, she didn't know her world was about to shift. A storm was brewing, one that would ripple from this small cafe to places she'd never imagined. The bell over Soul Haven's door jingled softly, its chime cutting through the morning hum of Oakley, Virginia. Amara Evans moved behind the counter, her sleeves rolled, hair pinned back, pouring dark roast into ceramic mugs saved for Heroes Hour. The cafe was alive with quiet chatter, the kind that felt like home. Regulars sipped coffee, their faces familiar, their stories etched in the lines of their eyes. Marcus Tate stepped through the door, his black lab mix, shadow at his heel. The dog's red vest gleamed with bold white letters. Service dog, do not pet. Marcus, a black veteran in his 50s, kept his gaze low, his steps measured. He wasn't one for long stays, but he came every Wednesday, and that meant something. Amara caught his eye, her wave soft but warm. "Your table's by the window, Marcus," she said, her voice steady as she set a mug on the counter. He nodded, a murmur of thanks, and guided Shadow to the corner, where the morning light spilled across the worn wooden floor. The air was calm, the cafe a sanctuary, where silence was as welcome as laughter. Then the mood shifted, sharp as a blade. The front door swung open with a brisk whoosh, and Olivia Bennett stepped in, her navy blazer pressed, her clipboard held like a badge of authority. Her name tag read State Health Inspector, and her expression carried no warmth. Amara greeted her, polite but firm, her hand still on the coffee pot. "Can I help you find something?" she asked. Olivia's reply was clipped, cold as the fluorescent lights overhead. "Unannounced inspection," she said, already moving through the space with surgical precision. She tapped countertops, checked labels, opened refrigerator doors, her pen scratching notes with mechanical efficiency. Then her eyes locked on Shadow, curled quietly at Marcus's feet. She stopped mid-step, as if she'd hit a wall. "That animal," she said, her voice loud enough to silence the room, "is in violation of state health code. No animals permitted where food is served." Heads turned, conversations died. Marcus stiffened, his hand tightening around his mug, knuckles pale against his dark skin. Shadow didn't move, his eyes fixed on his owner, steady and loyal. Amara stepped out from behind the counter, her apron still tied, her voice calm but unyielding. "He's a registered service dog, protected by federal law. He's no hazard." Olivia's frown deepened, her eyes scanning the room as if daring anyone to challenge her. "I don't care what vest he's wearing," she snapped. "Dogs carry dander, saliva, hair. This is a food safety issue. Remove him now or I'll shut this place down." The cafe held its breath, the air thick with tension. Marcus's shoulders hunched, his silence louder than words. A few regulars shifted in their seats, their eyes darting between Amara and the inspector. Amara took a slow breath, her gaze steady on Olivia. "I won't ask a veteran who served this country to leave," she said, her words clear, deliberate. "I won't ask his service dog to leave either. You can write your report, but you'll do it knowing you tried to humiliate a man who fought for the freedoms we all share, right in front of those he protected." Olivia's jaw clenched, her pen hovering over the clipboard. A murmur rose from a corner table. "She's right." But it was drowned out by a new voice. Karen Wells, the regional manager, stood in the doorway, her face a mask of disapproval. She'd arrived for a routine check, but her timing was anything but routine. "Amara Evans," she said, her tone cold as steel, "you've violated a direct health compliance policy in front of a state inspector. Pack your things. You're terminated." Gasps rippled through the cafe. A spoon clattered to the floor. Marcus half stood, his eyes wide, his voice caught in his throat. Amara didn't move at first. She looked around the room, at Marcus, at Shadow, at the small chalkboard sign that read, "Heroes Hour, free coffee for vets." Then she smiled, just faintly, and untied her apron. Her hands trembled as she folded it, placing it gently on the counter. She turned to Sarah Tran, the young barista by the espresso machine, and whispered, "Make sure Marcus gets his refill." Amara walked out the side door into the morning sunlight, leaving the cafe frozen behind her. But Sarah's phone was already in her hand, her thumb on the record button, capturing a quiet act of defiance that would soon set the world alight. The low rumble came first, faint as distant thunder over Virginia hills. Soul Haven's windows vibrated, coffee cups trembling on tables. Customers rose, pressing against the glass as morning mist parted on Oakley's Main Street. 3 military Humvees rolled into the lot, tires gripping pavement, headlights cutting through haze. Doors opened in unison, and Colonel James Carter stepped out, a black officer in crisp army greens, his ribbons gleaming under the dawn. His presence filled the space before he even entered. Inside, the cafe fell silent. Olivia Bennett stood by the counter, her clipboard idle, eyes wide. Karen Wells, the regional manager, froze, her face pale, as if the air had thickened. The bell jingled once, sharp and clear, as Colonel Carter stepped through the door, his boots striking the floor like a steady drum. He glanced at Sarah Tran, who swallowed hard, then at Marcus Tate, who rose slowly, shadow alert at his side. Their eyes locked, and Marcus gave a quiet nod, a soldier's acknowledgement. Carter returned it with a salute, precise and reverent. Olivia's voice faltered, her clipboard slipping slightly. "I was only following state regulations, sir," she said, her tone defensive, not defiant. "Health codes don't bend for anyone." Carter's gaze was steady, unyielding, cutting through her words. "Dignity doesn't need a code, ma'am. It's owed to every soul who served." He turned to Sarah, his voice calm but firm. "Is Amara Evans here?" Sarah shook her head, her words soft. She was fired for standing up for Marcus and his service dog. Carter's jaw tightened, his eyes sweeping the room, taking in every face, veterans, regulars, a kid with a half-eaten muffin. "That woman built a haven for soldiers carrying scars you can't see," he said. "She gave my men a place to breathe when words failed them. She honored a black veteran with the respect this nation too often forgets." Marcus cleared his throat, his voice low, breaking the silence for the first time. "She didn't ask me to explain Shadow, didn't hesitate when I walked in. She poured the coffee, gave me a seat. First time in years, I felt like I belonged." A woman by the register dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Another regular nodded, gripping his mug tighter. Olivia shifted, her voice rising slightly, grasping for control. "I enforce the rules to keep places safe. That's my job." Carter's eyes didn't waver. "Your job doesn't trump a man's worth." He stepped toward the door, raising a hand. Soldiers moved with quiet precision. Two unhooked the corporate logo from the wall, folding it carefully, like a retired flag. Another carried a new sign, hand-painted in bold, steady letters, "Amara's Haven, where honor lives." They hung it above the counter, the wood creaking faintly as it settled. Karen opened her mouth, but Carter's glance stopped her cold. "You made your choice when you let her go," he said, his voice like gravel. "Now we make ours." He pulled out his phone, his tone low but clear. "Send the directive to Fort Caldwell. Amara Evans reports to headquarters today." Sarah's phone buzzed, a message from the base flashing across her screen. Marcus exhaled, his eyes wide, Shadow pressing closer to his leg. Karen stood motionless, her authority shrinking in the shadow of Carter's resolve. Olivia clutched her clipboard, her earlier certainty gone, her face a mix of frustration and doubt. The cafe, once just a place for coffee and quiet mornings, now pulsed with something fiercer. A reckoning. The regulars watched, some standing, others whispering, as the weight of Amara's stand settled over them. Sarah's fingers tightened around her phone, the video she'd recorded already slipping into the world, shared from one screen to another. Outside, the Humvees idled, their engines a steady heartbeat, echoing beyond the cafe's walls. Amara's quiet courage, born in a moment of defiance, was no longer just hers. It was a spark, catching fire, spreading through Oakley and far beyond, carried by voices and screens to places she'd never seen. The cafe stood hushed, the air heavy with the weight of what had just unfolded. Colonel Carter's soldiers lingered outside, their silhouettes sharp against the morning light. Then the bell jingled again, softer this time, and Robert Bennett stepped through the door. A white man in his late 60s, hair silvered, his face etched with years of service, he carried himself with quiet authority. His eyes, kind but piercing, found Olivia, his daughter, still clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. She froze, her face draining of color, as if the ground beneath her had shifted. Robert's voice was low, steady, but it carried the weight of decades. "Olivia, you don't know what you've done." He paused, letting the words settle. "In '92, I was a young doctor with the UN peacekeeping mission in Somalia. Our convoy was ambushed. I'd have died if not for a black soldier, a man like Marcus, who risked everything to pull me from the wreckage." Olivia's hands trembled, her eyes dropping. Robert stepped closer, his tone softening but unyielding. "That man's sacrifice gave me a life, gave me you. And today, you tried to strip dignity from someone cut from the same cloth." The room was silent, every gaze on father and daughter. Marcus sat still, Shadow's head resting against his knee. Robert turned to him, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm sorry, sir." "You deserved better." He faced Olivia again, his eyes hard now. "I'll report this to your superiors myself. You'll be suspended until you learn what honor means." Olivia's lips parted, but no words came. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from defiance, but from shame. Robert looked at Sarah, then at the new sign, Amara's Haven. "That woman," he said. "She understood what I thought I'd taught you. Kindness isn't a rule. It's a debt we all owe." He nodded to Marcus, a gesture heavy with respect, and walked out, leaving Olivia alone in the quiet. Sarah's phone buzzed again, another message from Fort Caldwell, but the cafe felt different now, as if the walls themselves held a new truth. Amara's stand wasn't just defiance. It was a mirror, reflecting the choices we make when no one's watching. Amara sat in her truck, keys in hand, engine off, the morning's events replaying like a stubborn song. Coffee-stained jeans, her worn blue flannel, shoes scuffed from years of spilled espresso. She was still the woman who ran Soul Haven, but now she was something else too. Fired for doing right, she stared at the road ahead, the familiar path to Fort Caldwell. Her phone buzzed, a message from the base. Colonel Carter requested her presence at headquarters. She didn't know what it meant, but a quiet pull in her chest told her this was bigger than a cafe. She turned the ignition, the engine rumbling to life, and drove toward the gates she'd passed 100 times, never imagining she'd cross them like this. Fort Caldwell stood proud, its flag-lined avenues echoing with distant cadence calls. Colonel Carter met her at the administration building, his khaki uniform crisp, his presence steady. "Amara," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming." She shook it, firm but unsure. "Not certain why I'm here," she admitted. He led her down a hall, past portraits of commanders and maps of old campaigns, to a door marked Veteran Support Initiative. Inside, folding chairs, whiteboards, and boxes of supplies hinted at a dream still taking shape. "This is our pilot program," Carter said. 2 years in the making, but it needs someone who gets veterans, not from manuals, but from the heart. Amara folded her arms. "I'm no therapist, no degree in social work." Carter smiled faintly. "You built a place where broken souls found peace. That's more than any budget can buy." A young woman stepped forward, mid-20s, scars peeking from her sleeves. Her name tag read Lena Ortiz, a Latino veteran, a golden retriever puppy in a training vest at her side. "I saw the video," Lena said, voice shy. You stood up for Marcus. I haven't felt safe in a coffee shop since I came home, but I'd sit in a place you run. Amara blinked, her breath catching. Carter's tone softened. You created a sanctuary without trying. That's leadership. We want you to run this center. Build it. Shape it. Make it home. Amara looked at Lena, at the puppy, at the bare walls waiting for life. She thought of Marcus, of Shadow, of David's photo above the register. I'll do it, she said quietly, her voice steady with purpose. Carter nodded. Then let's get to work. In that moment, Amara felt the shift. A new mission, born from a single stand, ready to ripple beyond Oakley's borders. That night, Amara stood alone in the new Veteran Support Initiative at Fort Caldwell, the walls bare, the floors scuffed, but the air thick with possibility. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo of David, her husband, sitting outside Soul Haven, his boots up, a grin lighting his face. She pinned it to the wall. No frame, no fuss, just memory and mission. Word spread fast. By week's end, the center wasn't just a program. It was alive. Veterans who hadn't set foot on base in years showed up, some with hesitant spouses, others with stories they'd buried too long. The Oakley Herald ran a front-page story. From cafe to calling, Amara Evans rebuilds trust one cup at a time. Amara didn't chase headlines. She did what she'd always done, paid attention. She remembered names, wrote them in her worn notebook, now filling with new pages. She set up a whiteboard by the coffee pot. Need a ride? Need a listener? Dogs curled up in therapy room corners, no questions asked. Marcus came often, Shadow claiming a corner like it was home. He'd started painting again. Sketches of Shadow, of open roads, of healing. Lena Ortiz showed up every Tuesday, not ready for group talks but sketching hands, dogs, homecomings. Sarah Tran, the barista from Soul Haven, visited Fridays, bringing coffee and laughter, weighing in on everything from paint colors to program flyers. Not everyone was sold. Some base officials whispered about Amara's lack of credentials, their clipboards and stiff suits trailing skepticism. One inspector, peering over glasses, asked, "What qualifies you to lead this?" Amara didn't flinch. "Consistency and kindness," she said softly. He scribbled notes, saying nothing. A week later, a notice arrived. The center was under review for national expansion. Colonel Carter called it a win. Amara called it humbling. Back at Soul Haven, the cafe had changed. Photos of veterans lined the walls. Marcus, Lena, others. A new sign by the register. Amara's Corner. No one sits alone. The place hummed with the same warmth, but now it carried her name, a quiet testament to her stand. Amara didn't linger on it. She drove to a local fundraiser, speaking to a small crowd of elders and kids with handmade signs. "I didn't plan this," she said, voice steady. "I just couldn't turn away a man and his dog." The applause was long, real. Marcus stood in the back, his silver star pinned to his chest, and gave her a quiet nod. That astai. The sun dipped low over Fort Caldwell, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. Amara stood outside the Veteran Support Initiative, her silhouette steady against the fading light. She'd been invited to Washington, nominated for a National Civilian Commendation for Distinguished Service to Veterans. The letter, sealed with the Department of Defense emblem, felt heavy in her hands. She wasn't a speaker, never sought the spotlight. But when she stepped to the podium in that grand ballroom, her voice was small, yet sure. "I'm no general, no doctor," she said. "I ran a cafe near a base. I poured coffee, listened. But in that space, Something sacred grew. Veterans didn't need fixing. They needed to be seen. The crowd leaned in, some nodding, others wiping tears. I lost my job for letting a man sit with his dog. That moment changed everything, not because of me, but because of what we can do when we choose dignity. Applause thundered, but Amara's eyes found Marcus in the back, his nod steadier than any cheer. Back in Oakley, she returned to the center, quiet under starlight. She added a photo to the wall, a snapshot of the conference crowd, standing, clapping, beside one of David outside Soul Haven. Below, she taped a card. Honor grows where kindness endures. A young veteran stepped through the door, eyes nervous. "Is this for people like me?" he asked. Amara smiled, gentle but firm. "Son, this is for all of us." Her circle wasn't just full, it was open. In a world rushing forward, it's easy to miss the quiet heroes. The barista who stays, the veteran who paints, the woman who listens. Amara didn't wear a uniform, but she defended something sacred: dignity. Her story asks us to pause. Have you seen kindness change a life? Have you stood for someone when it wasn't easy? Share your story in the comments. Your voice could spark the next flame. If Amara's tale moves you, like, share, and subscribe to Black Echoes. We tell stories of those who remind us honor isn't a moment, it's a choice, made daily.